Hibernian FC SKOL Cup 30th anniversary. An excerpt from the book From Oblivion to Hampden, Hibs Heroes of 1991. Read by me. The great gig on the sky. Rangers against Hibernian. We have gone from one extreme to the other, from the verge of extinction to the possible dawn of a new era for the football club. If we beat Rangers, it will be a historical turning point. Murdo MacLeod. Last season when I was in England, I read a lot about how bad Hibs are. They seem to have vastly improved this season. Stuart McCall, Rangers. Hibernian's semi-final against Glasgow Rangers at Hampden on the 25th of September 1991 was the first major Scottish League Cup match to be shown live on Sky Sports. Sky had shown its first live Scottish League game back in April of 1991, Dundee United v Rangers, but from the start these screenings, which meant that the games featured could potentially be seen all over the developed world, not just in the UK, were arranged on a game-by-game basis only. The objections from the Northern Irish and Welsh FAs on the grounds that Scottish Cup fixtures on live TV would impact on attendances at their own fixtures were the main cause of the disruption to what at the time was a £12 million deal for Scottish football from Sky or Sky B. The Hibs against Rangers semi-final went out live after a late arrangement was reached between the aforementioned FAs and Sky, and the matter was settled amicably in the end. In other words, money talked. There were no further objections from other FAs in other countries about future Scottish games being shown live on television. In the news that week, the USA and what was left of the disintegrating Soviet Union had just started talks to do away with short-range nuclear missiles forever. At home, the UK government had just declared the end of the country's economic recession. In the 1991-92 SKOL League Cup, Hibernian had produced 3 good team performances in matches that, if they'd been played the previous season, would have jangled the nerves of even the most die-hard of Hibs fans. A part-time First Division team, Stirling Albion, who would have been a potential banana skin a year ago, had been easily beaten 3-0 in a game where Hibs could basically have scored 6 or 7. Kilmarnock had been eliminated 3-2 in a game in which Hibs had conceded the first goal and had also had a man sent off in the later stages, and either circumstance may have caused the heads of the 1990-91 Hibs team to go down and may have led to a defeat. Ayr United had been disposed of 2-0 in a quarter-final game where many pundits had tipped the honest men to win by virtue of the fact that they were a big, strong, physical team, the type of team who might have bulldozed Hibernian in 1990, but whom the class of 1991-92 ultimately dealt with comfortably. Hibs had scored 8 goals in the League Cup run to date, with just 2 conceded, both in that Kilmarnock match. To put that into perspective, in the whole of season 90-91, Hibs scored more than 1 goal on just 4 occasions in all competitions. Hibs' good start to 1991-92 had seen them unbeaten in all competitions before the Rangers semi-final, with 11 games played, 7 of them having been victories and the other 4 being draws. 20 goals had been scored, just 8 conceded. It was easily Hibs' best start to a season under Alec Miller up until then. Moreover, It showed just how much the team's confidence had improved, thanks to a couple of fresh faces arriving and, more importantly, the end of the off-pitch dramatics. Such problems affect football players, just as behind-the-scenes issues or threats of redundancy do when they become a possibility for staff at any other type of workplace. Hibs early in 91-92 had the three main virtues that a team needs to succeed: stability, goals, and above all, confidence. It would, however, take more than confidence if Hibernian were to be David to Rangers' Goliath at Hampden. Not only had the Glasgow Giants recently secured their third successive league title, they were also the SKOL League Cup holders and, to be blunt, the League Cup was considered to be their cup. Their capture of it the previous season had been the 17th time that they had won it in the 44 years since the competition had been established. A formidable record if ever there was one. Rangers also had the best record of any Scottish club in cup semi-finals. They rarely lose them. Hibs, in contrast, have always had a poor record in semi-finals, particularly in the Scottish Cup though. Miller's men were going to have to pull the proverbial white fluffy animal out of the hat to have any chance of winning this one, on paper at least. It was the 11th consecutive season in which Rangers had reached the tournament's semi-finals. In contrast, Alex Miller had only ever managed in a semi-final twice. The 1989 Hibs disaster in the Scottish Cup against Celtic at Hampden, and a 2-1 defeat to Celtic in 1984 when he was managing St Mirren. The two sides had last met in the SKOL League Cup back in season 1985-86 when John Blackley was the main man at Easter Road. It had been in the semi-finals, a two-legged affair with the Hibees winning the Easter Road leg 2-0 thanks to goals from the two Gordons, Dury and Chisholm. Gordon Chisholm had just 7 months earlier scored the winning goal in the English League Cup final for Norwich City at Wembley. Unfortunately for Gordon Chisholm, he was playing for Sunderland at the time, and his own goal in front of 100,000 spectators gifted Norwich the cup. Rangers did beat Hibs 1-0 at Ibrox in the second leg of that semi-final. So John Blackley's men progressed to what would be Gordon Chisholm's second final in 7 months. Of course, we got cuffed off Aberdeen in the final, but that's life. Before the 1991 meeting at Hampden between Hibs and Rangers, Hibs had beaten the Glasgow side in 5 League Cup matches. Rangers had won 11 times and there had been 6 draws. Therefore, history was not really on Hibs' side, if past results were anything to go by. But one stat gave superstitious fans some hope to cling to. That's right. Hibs had beat Rangers in the 1972 League Cup semi-final on their way to winning the trophy. In 1991, Walter Smith had recently taken over from Graham Souness in the Ibrox hot seat. Souness had left to manage Liverpool. Since Celtic's League and Cup double in their centenary season of 87-88, Rangers had dominated the Scottish game, backed by millionaire businessman David Murray's money. As well as their recent acquisition, Andy Gorham, the Rangers squad boasted a wealth of talent, including many international players. Their captain was Scotland defender Richard Gough. They had talented striker Mo Johnston, a somewhat controversial player because he had been the club's first high-profile Roman Catholic signing in the modern era back in 1989. His signing had sort of ended the club's sectarian recruitment policy, and it was made more controversial by the fact that the Gers had landed him from under the very noses of Celtic, whom he'd been set to rejoin after a spell in France with Nantes. Rangers also had former England and Serie A star Mark Hateley, a tall striker who thrived against lesser defenders in Scotland. Rangers also boasted Stuart McCall, the Scotland midfielder who had played alongside Murdo MacLeod for the national side at World Cup Italia 90. McCall had even scored in Scotland's 2-1 win over Sweden in that tournament's group stages. Rangers had signed McCall in 1991 from Everton. They also had former England right-back Gary Stevens, former Liverpool and Chelsea midfielder Nigel Spackman, and Dutch international winger Peter Hoekstra. Rangers also had some good homegrown talent, with midfield players like Ian Ferguson, Ian Durrant, and a certain striker called Ali McCoist. Ali McCoist had, at one stage under Souness, been nicknamed the Judge, due to the fact that he was always on the bench, but with Walter Smith taking the helm, Super Ali, as he became known, had returned to favour. All in all, the Rangers team Alex Miller's men faced at Hampden in September 1991 was formidable, and few outside the green half of Edinburgh saw the Cabbage as having any realistic chance of knocking the Glasgow Giants out and progressing to the final. However, sport's fickle at the top. A rude shock awaited the Gers. As one might expect, Hibs fans found themselves heavily outnumbered at Hampden on that September evening under the floodlights. Rangers supporters making up the bulk of the crowd of just fewer than 41,000. Some Hibs followers were housed in a small section of that old rickety main stand at Hampden, but the majority of the green and white army was housed in what's known as the traditional Celtic end of terracing, the uncovered East End. Typical entry prices on the night were £6 for adults and £2 for children. The referee was Dougie Hope, who no doubt hoped to put in a better performance than his colleague David Syme had in the other semi-final at Tynecastle the night before. In the quarter-finals, Rangers had beaten Hearts 1-0 thanks to a McCoy strike. Going into the semi-final, the Gers were odds-on favourites to retain the trophy, and Mo Johnston looked set to be the tournament's top scorer, which carried a bonus prize for the winner of a £1,500 holiday for two, plus £500 spending money to a destination of the winner's choice. Interestingly, Hibs, still unbeaten in all competitions, hadn't played Rangers in the league yet that season. Even more interestingly, the Gers had injury and absence problems, most notably the late withdrawal of influential skipper Richard Gough through injury and the absence of their two Ukrainian stars, Alexei Mikhailchenko and Oleg Kuznetsov, both of whom were on international duty playing for the old Soviet Union. But even without that trio, Rangers players, pundits and fans seemed confident of victory. The green jerseys attacked the Rangers end of the ground in the first half, and so it began. Edinburgh's David against Glasgow's Goliath. The lineups were: for Hibs, in goal John Burridge, number 2 Willie Miller, number 3 Graham Mitchell, number 4 Murdo MacLeod, number 5 Tommy McIntyre, number 6 Gordon Hunter, number 7 Mickey Weir, number 8 Brian Hamilton, number 9 Keith Wright, number 10 Mark McGraw, and number 11 Pat McGinley. Substitutes for Hibs: number 12 Neil Orr and number 14 Gareth Evans. Rangers started the match with Andy Gorham, Gary Stevens, David Robertson, John Brown, Nigel Spackman, Scott Nisbet, Stuart McCall, Ian Durrant, Mark Hateley, Mo Johnston and Peter Hoekstra. On the bench they had Sandy Robertson, and Ali McCoist. Hibernian actually had the first chance when in the opening minutes, poor communication in Rangers' back line gave Keith Wright a half chance after he latched onto a long ball from Graham Mitchell, but the striker was crowded out by a combination of Andy Gorham, John Brown and Scott Nisbet before he could shoot. Hibs then had to endure a 20-minute onslaught of sorts from the best team in Scotland. Rangers' first effort on goal saw a fine passing move end with Ian Durrant blasting the ball high and wide to the loud derision of the Hibs fans behind the goal. Nisbet, a late replacement for Richard Gough, then picked up the ball from his defence. He kept on progressing, beating 4 Hibs players rather easily before shooting wide from 40 yards, to the relief of John Burridge, who hadn't been expecting the shot and had quickly dived only to see it, thankfully, fly past his left-hand post. The Gers then strung together an impressive attacking move, started by Stevens on the right flank, going via Johnston, Spackman, McCall and then Hoostra, who ghosted into the box and squared the ball to Hateley at the near post. But Tommy McIntyre did enough to put the Englishman off, and he ended up stabbing the ball wide. John Burridge thumped the resultant goal kick all the way up the pitch to Gers left back David Robertson, who then headed the ball forward to Hateley. His clever flick played in the impressive Stuart McCall, who slid the ball out to Hoostra on the left wing once more. This time, the Dutchman sent in a powerful looping cross to the far post, which John Burridge caught and then dropped. Mo Johnston, by far Rangers' most impressive player thus far, was lurking in the 6-yard box and was about to slam the ball into the net. But Burridge recovered from his error and used his hands and then his head to nudge the ball from Johnston's path and across the gaping goal. Gordon Hunter managed to scramble the ball away to the penalty spot, from where Pat McGinley thumped it to safety, conceding a corner but giving Hibernian vital breathing space to reorganise. A short corner to Hoostra was whipped into the danger zone, but Willie Miller headed the ball back out into midfield. Miller's header went only as far as Hoostra again, who this time played the ball inside to Scott Nisbet, who tried to audaciously lob John Burridge from 35 yards. Fortunately for Hibs and unfortunately for Nisbet, John Burridge wasn't born yesterday, and he was on his line at the time and easily caught the effort. Once Burridge had caught the ball, the linesman signalled that there'd been an offside anyway, so Nisbet's effort was wasted. The green jerseys got another precious moment in which to regain their composure amid this intense Rangers onslaught. At this stage, with 27 minutes played, it was all Rangers, and Burridge's clearance saw Brian Hamilton beaten to the header in the centre circle by Nigel Spackman, but the Englishman's header only went a few yards to McGinley. Pat McGinley then hooked a superb ball forward into the path of the on-rushing Mark McGraw.
Who's chasing, and Gorham gets a fist to it, only as far as Weir. What will Weir do here? And Wright! It's a goal for Hibs! It's Keith Wright who scored it!
The ball bounced in front of young Mark McGraw 20 yards from goal. But Andy Gorham, playing against his old team for the first time and immediately seeing the danger, had sprinted from his goal to punch the ball clear on the edge of the box, flooring McGraw in the process. Gorham's punch went only as far as Mickey Weir, about 30 yards out. Weir could either have lobbed the retreating, out of position Gorham, or could have crossed the ball to the only Hibs player in the box who was still on his feet. Mickey chose the latter, but actually he ended up doing both, floating a beautifully weighted cross to the edge of the 6-yard box and onto the head of Keith Wright, who leapt to head the ball between the two Rangers defenders on the line and into the net. Nisbet and Stevens were on the line, but had chosen to cover a post each. So Keith simply kept his cool and nodded the ball between them. The Hibs end erupted, with their team a goal up and 29 minutes played. Against all odds, it was 1-0 to Hibs. Somehow, this team from Edinburgh, whom only a few months previously had been under the threat of extinction and had started season 1991-92 as the bookies' favourites for relegation, were leading at Hampden Park against the cup holders, the best team in Scotland at that time. The Hibs players looked delighted. The Hibs fans were jumping around on the terracing like lunatics. Many simply couldn't believe it. Such was their elation that the first loud actual song audible in the stadium after the goal was a Rangers one, Derry's Walls, as the Hibs fans were still busy celebrating. But when the jumping around finally died down a bit, the defiant chant of "Hail, hail, the Hibs are here" echoed around the National Stadium, silencing the huge Rangers support until they themselves started booing that song, but they couldn't drown out the jovial High B hordes. Hibs fans watching at the game, at home, or in the pub, or listening on the radio, couldn't believe it. The goal had been the perfect answer to that 20-minute period of sustained pressure we had fought off from the Gers. Scoring early against Rangers always provides fans of most Scottish clubs with one nagging doubt though. There was still 61 minutes to play. It was to be the longest 61 minutes of football most Hibs fans had ever experienced. Rangers kicked off again and tried to pass with more urgency, but Hibs soon regained the ball. And in the 37th minute, Pat McGinley sent the ball forward down the right wing to Weir, the little winger firing a dangerous diagonal ball into the box which missed everyone until it was picked up by Mark McGraw on the left. His cross was poor though and found only Nisbet, but the clumsy defender, under no pressure, headed the ball out straight out to Mickey Weir on the edge of the box. Weir played a neat 1-2 with Brian Hamilton before shooting for the near post and was only denied by a superb reflex save by Andy Gorham. All the roars in the stadium were coming from the Hibs fans, making a racket which drowned out the Rangers supporters' attempts to get their own team going. At half time it was Rangers 0, Hibernian 1. How does the chorus of that famous 1980s Bon Jovi song go again? Oh, we're halfway there. The second half got underway, with the Rangers fans singing loudly in an attempt to lift their team. But the truth was that Rangers weren't playing badly. They just weren't playing brilliantly, while Hibs were composed, calm, and above all, lucky. Hibs went on to the attack again. Mickey Weir clipped a pass to the back post, which Gary Stevens almost put through his own net, and Andy Gorham eventually had to tip the ball away to prevent Keith Wright from scoring his second. A tense midfield battle then ensued, and Rangers launched a succession of high balls up to Mark Hateley, but Gordon Hunter and Tommy McIntyre stood like the Edinburgh Castle Rock, repelling all attacks. With an hour gone, Rangers replaced Ian Durant with McCoist, and after 70 minutes they carved out another chance when Brown thumped another long ball forward. Hateley brilliantly headed Brown's punt on to Mo Johnston, who wrong-footed his mate Graham Mitchell before unleashing a superb curling shot from 20 yards which beat John Burridge but came back off the inside of the post. For once, Hibs' defence was helpless, as McCoist looked set to score with the rebound from 8 yards out. But John Burridge recovered brilliantly, racing across his goal to dive and smother the sort of chance that striker rarely missed. Hibs survived again. Alex Miller replaced Mark McGraw with Gareth Evans with 15 minutes to go. McGraw had, once again, run himself into the ground, but it didn't take Gareth Evans, or Gazer as he was known, long to make an impact. Evans started a move just inside the Hibs half, then almost finished it himself with a great shot from wide on the left, just outside the box, which beat Gorham but went inches past his far post. Rangers hit back, with McCoist, Hateley and McCall combining, only for Gordon Hunter to step in at the last minute to prevent McCall from shooting. The Rangers fans typically howled for a penalty at this, but not one player on the pitch tried to claim one. It was end-to-end stuff, and Murdo McLeod then ran from the halfway line before slipping a pass out to Mitchell on the left. Mitchell threaded the ball into the box to Gareth Evans, whose brilliant turn dummied 2 Rangers defenders before he cracked a fierce drive towards the bottom corner, which was brilliantly saved by Andy Gorham. The Hibs fans behind the goal, as the minutes ticked away, now believed, or at least began to believe, that it was going to happen. We were going to beat Rangers. The Gers, in the closing stages, looked increasingly devoid of ideas, despite having Scotland's best strike force, while Hibs grew in stature as the match wore on. Keith Wright had a shot saved by Gorham in the dying minutes, when Mickey Weir took the ball for a walk down to the corner flag to waste a few seconds. Rangers got it back and once again lumped the ball forward. That was the last kick of the game. There had only actually been just over 1 minute of injury time, but even that had seemed like an eternity to us, the Green and White Army from Edinburgh. The final whistle came and the Hibs fans jumped around, danced and generally went bananas, for want of a better expression. Hibs songs and chants echoed around the ground as the Gers fans hurriedly made for the exits, the sound of High B victory songs ringing in their ears. The Hibs support was in sweet rapture as the players made their way over to celebrate in front of them. David had indeed slain Goliath, and the unthinkable had happened. Hibs were into their first major cup final since 1985 and their first cup final under Alex Miller. Hibs had only won the League Cup once in their history to date, but now they had a big chance to win it again. A big global audience also saw the victory live on Sky too. For a few minutes at the end, the Hibs terrace was a sea of green and white scarves, held aloft with pride. Hibs had also extended their domestic and unbeaten run to 12 games. Rangers hadn't played particularly badly. They'd had the bulk of the possession, but they never had that crucial ingredient needed for cup matches that night: luck. Hibs, on the other hand, had been largely superb from start to finish, soaking up everything thrown at them and creating chances themselves. It was a deserved win for the men from Leith. Hibs legend Paul Kane had driven all the way up from Oldham just to watch the match, and he praised his former teammates afterwards, saying, "I'm delighted, they fully deserved to win." Man of the match Mickey Weir was modest, saying that he felt the whole Hibs team deserved the accolade he'd been given, but everyone knew that Mickey had been Hibs' star man on the night. Andy Gorham wished his old teammates well, and he said, "I wish the lads all the best. I hope they win it. All credit to Alex Miller and the rest of the lads. They've been doing so well. I wish them all the best for the final." Goal hero Keith Wright said, "I'm delighted for the fans. Last time Hibs fans came here for a final, I was one of them, organising a bus. It was a historic victory for Hibernian. The £1 match programme was now a collector's item, and there was only one topic of conversation among half of Edinburgh and beyond now. The final. That would be contested by Hibernian and Dunfermline Athletic on Sunday the 27th of October 1991. A few hours earlier, when the Hibs team bus had arrived at Hampden for the semi-final, carrying the Sons of Leith, its door had jammed in the car park, briefly trapping the team on board until it was eventually forced open. Perhaps it was an omen. At the time, some may have seen it as a bad omen, but as it turned out, it was a good one, as it symbolised Hibernian's no-exit policy in the 1991 SKOL League Cup. Now, all that stood between Hibernian, newly christened by Sky as